All right. Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Lore Master Society. I am your host, Robert McDonnell, and I'm joined by my co-host, Nick Jensen.
Welcome.
We do a deep dive into the lore of the Forgotten Realms every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're going to be providing to all our listeners a look at the Forgotten Realms in a way that has not been done before. We're going to be looking at the roleplay, or the fluff as it's commonly referred to, of the realms by examining the realms through the lens of organizations, religions, cities, nations, geography, races, personalities, the weave, or what is referred to as magic or art, ecology, historical events, and more. However, we're going to ensure that you can utilize the lore here within to flesh out your campaigns as a dungeon master or to enrich your characters as a player. The first episode is going to be about the Harpers, an organization that is surrounded by a great abundance of legend, lore, and myth. They are very commonly thought to be a Robin Hood sort of a group that does the good deeds that some countries, city-states, or groups just can't do on their own, whether it be because of legal or philosophical reasons, or just simply the inability to deal with the threat. However, there's a lot more to the Harpers, and in fact, a very dark side to the Harpers that not many know about. We're going to be diving deep into the Harpers' long, tumultuous, and compelling history, current events, and what makes them much more fascinating than what is seen at first glance. And now a quote from the Harpers to open our show. "Without a past, no being can appreciate what they have and where they may be going." Let our adventure begin. So, as I mentioned, we're going to really dig into a lot of the fluff that really doesn't get a lot of airtime or a lot of focus in campaigns. We all love jumping right in and going crazy for those awesome combat scenes and scenarios that make so many of our adventures rewarding. But with such an amazing campaign setting like the Forgotten Realms, it's so rich, it's so fleshed out. I think any DM or player that is playing in a Realms campaign would be remiss to not want to use all of this epic material that's available. And so that's why I thought, let's really dig into this stuff and go. And so organizations, when we looked at having them be a part of the lineup of material, the Harpers just jumped right out right at the beginning. They're known as that sort of Robin Hood kind of a group that strikes out and does good things and fights wickedness and villainy and whatnot. And there's a lot of misconceptions about them that I think should be cleared up that provide awesome opportunities for a DM in a campaign to exploit for further adventures, maybe to darken up their campaign a little bit more, or cheer it up maybe, depending on how you want to use the material. And for players, there's an opportunity for them to add aspects of, or I should say to their player, or to their character rather, that really allow for like some spy-like opportunities, because the Harpers is really sort of a CIA-like group. And how fun would that be to be able to play some sort of a spy in, D&D in the Forgotten Realms? What do you think, Nick?
It's certainly not how I had perceived them in my mind. I mean, I'm much newer to the Forgotten Realms as a campaign setting and a world than you are, but I'd heard of the Harpers, and more or less the thought I got was, you're the stock good faction. You do good. G umlaut, you do good. I was less than interested. Honestly, before you were gracious enough to ask me to be on your podcast for this, I hadn't spared much of a thought for them. They'd struck me as sort of a roving band of quest givers for adventuring groups to go out and do things that would aid the Harpers and, by extension, the realm.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think that's I think the idea of a quest giver is actually really good, because whenever I've had conversations just sort of off the cuff with people, it's always been that they really are what you said. Here's this group of people that just sort of go out and do things. And by the way, you can stop off at this place and, Steve will get you a quest so you can go be an adventurer or whatever. And it just really waters down what is there. I mean, there's such a rich history behind them. And to utilize that in its fullest way, I think, is just a veritable treasure trove of material that can really allow DMs and players to their characters, like I was saying earlier, to delve into something that they just don't realize is there. Like you were saying, you weren't aware of it.
Yeah, and I have to say, after doing some research, there is so much more depth and a little bit of spice and a little bit of darkness to the Harpers that I find refreshing.
I agree, and it's just it's that complexity of what makes the organization what it really is that I think makes it so compelling, and why it's a good selection for discussion at the Lore Master Society. I actually want to start off, even though we began with a small quote, I actually want to start off with a larger quote. It's 5 paragraphs. It's from one of the Harpers, one of the Master Harpers, named Storm Silverhand. And I want to read it because I think it really captures succinctly the very nature of the Harpers. Of course, biased from within their organization, but I think it gives a good starting point for us before we get into the Code of the Harpers, which, by the way, is a fantastic accessory. It's FOR4, the Code of the Harpers. It's a 2nd edition book. It is all fluff. It talks about, well, there are some stats in there, but it's really just about the organization. It is a fantastic accessory. If you do not have FOR4, the Code of the Harpers, you can find it on eBay for probably a lot more than it originally went for, but it is definitely worth getting. But with that, I want to read this quote from Storm Silverhand, and it goes, "A Harper is one of a company of those with similar interests men, elves, and half-elves. Most bards and many rangers in the north are Harpers. More women than men are Harpers. We have no ranks, only varying degrees of personal influence. Our badge is a silver moon and a silver harp upon a black or royal blue field. Many female mages and most druids are our allies, and we are generally accounted to be good folk. A Harper is one who tolerates many faiths and deeds, but who works against warfare, slavery, and wanton destruction of the plants and creatures of the land. We oppose those who would build empires by the sword or spilled blood, or who would work art or magic, heedless of the consequences. We see the arts and lore of fallen Myth Draenor as a high point in the history of all races. We work toward the careful preservation of history, crafts, and knowledge. We work towards that which made Myth Draenor great, the happy and willing sharing of life with all races. We work against and must often fight those of evil mind, the Zentarum, the cult of the dragon, that plunders the lore and art of the realms to enrich their revered Dracoliches, the slavers of Thay, those who plunder and willfully destroy tombs and libraries everywhere, and those who would overturn peace and unleash fire and sword across the land to raise their own thrones. We guard folk against these when we can. We also guard books and their lore, precious instruments and their music, and art and its good works. All these things serve hands and hearts yet unborn, those who will come after us. We seek to keep kingdoms small, build with trade and the problems of their people. Any ruler who grows too strong and seeks to take knowledge and power from others is a threat. More precious knowledge is risked when his empire falls, as fall it must. Only in tavern tales are humans wholly evil or shiningly good. We do what we can for all and stand in the way of all who threaten knowledge. Who are we to decide who shall know or not know lore? The gods have given us the freedom and the power to strive amongst ourselves. They have not laid down a strict order that compels each of us to do exactly thus and so. Who knows better than the gods what knowledge is good or bad, and who shall have it? Harper bards always sing true tales of kings as far as truth is known. They do not, for any reward, sing falsely the grand deeds of an usurper, or falsely portray as bad the nature and deeds of his vanquished predecessor. Even if such would make good tales and songs, a harper cleaves to the truth. The truth, a thing slightly different for everyone, must be the rock that the castle of knowledge and achievement is built upon. Strong words, eh? I feel strongly. If you come to do so too, you will truly be harpers. If one falls out of such belief, he or she should leave the struggle and our ranks. I hope only that whether you walk with us or no, or join and then leave us thereafter, that you walk always together and take joy in each other's company. It is through such love or longing, when in lack of it, that much learning and celebration comes about. It adds to the culture that we strive to save and nurture. Fight not always with blade or spell. The slower ways are the sure, freely given friendships and trust built. These things evil cannot abide. It shrinks away from what it cannot destroy with fire and blade. And that is a quote from Storm Silverhand, the Bard of Shadowdale, when she was speaking with Chandra Chasser in the Year of the Prince, 1357 DR. Chandra Chasser is a very important spellfire wielder who we'll probably talk about in another episode.
And in summation, we the Harpers want you.
Yes, I think I just read the Uncle Sam poster recruiting quote for the Harpers there to get everybody on board.
No, I could see a tavern full of first-level characters pulling out their short swords and jumping to join.
Well, possibly. I mean, they do really make a private affair of joining the Harpers, which we'll go over a little bit later, but it's interesting because when you consider the Harpers and what it takes to join,